Jake needs to apologize to the chef now.
Yeah, sorry, I have the diet of a 12-year-old child, and that's even being a little generous. Up next, we have a band that we have not talked about in a minute. We have Winona Fighter, who have dropped their debut album. My apologies to the chef.
Talk all the talk that you wanna, right to my face, 'cause I wanna play. Don't cower, now see what you're gonna.
We talked about I'm in the Market to Please No One as a single around a year ago now. Derek, thanks to you for that one.
You're welcome.
And I stopped listening to the singles late last year for this album, and I am so glad I did. Because I was all over this album all month. And with that being said, I think my general standpoint of this album as a whole is it's biased to being better than I think it actually is, because some of the singles on here are just that good that I've been going back to them for weeks on end at this point, but there's also a number of songs on here that have been a little forgettable. And I think because I've been just listening to my favorite songs on here for the most part and have gotten those stuck in my head, I think the album as a whole is better than it actually is, forgetting that some of the songs on here are a little underwhelming. But even with that minor criticism, this is without a doubt one of my favorite albums I've heard all year so far, and one that I absolutely did not expect to be nearly as good as it is.
This is probably the strongest argument. We talk a lot about with the whole new structure of, we need to release like 8 singles for an album because that's how the algorithm works, and we give up and stop listening after like 4 or 5. Like, to me, this is the strongest case in recent memory of don't listen to the singles for an upcoming album.
With that being said, had I heard Wilburn Street Tavern and Hams in a Glass going into this album, I think I would have been way more excited, because those are like two of my favorite songs on here. They were released as singles, and like, had I had those 2 singles to go off of, I probably would have been excited going into every single dropped for this album, just because of how strong those 2 songs are.
I really appreciate how little of a fuck this album gives.
That's one of the points I was going to make. Has there ever been an angrier non-metalcore album that we've talked about on the podcast?
I don't think so. I think the closest don't give a fuck energy that we've ever had would be Stand Atlantic.
I was going to say, this album is if you took Molotov and made Molotov 14 times over.
Yeah. Well, what I appreciate is that it's so aggressive and raw. Like, for me, like that scream of frustration in Are You Famous is just like, yeah, you know what? I'm pissed off and I'm going to scream and yell about it, and it's going to go into the album recording, and I don't care because it fits the vibe of the song and the album as a whole so well. I think the biggest selling point, and I don't know the vocalist's name, and I'm going to see if it's on Spotify really quickly. And it's Coco. Okay. Coco, you can tell from this album that she is confident in knowing who she is and like how well she knows herself. Because the commentary on this album, like just about the people around her or about herself, is so confident. And because she's so confident, and because the lyrical content is so confident and raw, it kind of allows her to really lean into like the don't give a fuck energy, the rawness, that I'm going to say exactly how I feel about this situation or about this person. And if they don't like it, they can fuck off. Like that's one of the biggest takeaways about this album, I feel like, is confidence and having that confidence to be yourself.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I hadn't thought about like using confidence as a way to describe this album, but this album screams literally confidence.
I mean, she's in the market to please nobody. Like,
yeah. Like, I have a bunch of lyrics written down for like some of my favorite deliveries of just like that raw energy. Hams in a Glass, that opening line of "Got pull over and I'm getting closer to blowing my fucking brains."
Yup.
Phenomenal. But then you get like some quieter moments as well. Like, again, Hams in a Glass, "I'm a little stressed out, just a little stressed out. Is anybody else stressed out?" Like, I really like that. The Jesus Christ and "I'm in the market to please no one," we've talked about it when we talked about it as a single, is really good. But I think the lyric that has stuck with me the most I believe is in Are You Famous, and it's the bridge where it goes, stop, just listen. I know all the things thought I wouldn't see. You said it and meant it, regret it you don't. Men take it back, cowards keep throwing stones. And my home has never been glass. Unlike your bones, weak like your spine, I'll save you the face, I'll save you the hurt. Remember my name till you sleep in the dirt. Fuck you. Oh, it's so confident. It is so angry. It is so cathartic.
Yes,
I don't have anyone to direct this anger towards in my life at the moment, but I listen to it and I feel good because I am releasing anger that is bent up into the air. It doesn't, like, I'm not directing any of my anger and frustrations with the world at anyone, but this album lets me take that energy that I build up and just stomp it out if I need to. Headbang. I don't know. It's just, I haven't heard an album quite like this in a while.
No, absolutely
if ever.
not. I think too, part of it in being so like aggressive at times is her delivery is also like very nonchalant. Like she doesn't give a fuck, but she's not like pushing it on you. Like it's very like I don't vibey's not the quite the right.
Yeah, no,
word,
it's not vibey. Yeah.
Which is, it's a hard balance to strike with this kind of music, and especially with, I would say it's fair to label this punk rock.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
Punk generally doesn't have that kind of delivery, but it's this great combo between grit and nonchalantness, and this whole album, we've been talking about the delivery on the vocals, but instrumentally too is so solid. There's so many great riffs on here. The drumming keeps
the guitar solo, and I keep going back to Hands in a Glass.
Hands in a Glass. It's a banger. What can we say?
It's so good. But also the guitar at the beginning of Wilburn Street Tavern, just that, like, immediately into the song. I'm gonna do it how I want it and how I want it, whatever the fuck that lyric says. Another thing about that song, I love how at the end of it they bleep fuck. It's like, and they bleep it, but then the next time they do it, they don't bleep it. It's like an unnecessary touch, but it's so funny and awesome.
Yeah, it's an artistic choice that I really appreciate. Another thing to add to the charm and kind of quirkiness a little bit of this album.
Yes.
That would be the biggest Stand Atlantic comparison that I would take. That, like, especially when they were Pink Elephant, like Fuck Everything and Run era, where it just truly seemed like they were making music that expressed who they were and how they were feeling, and they were doing whatever they wanted in order to express that. Like, I get that same exact vibe from this album. Cathartic was a word that I hadn't put to it, but it's perfect.
This is cathartic punk rock.
Yes. you can bring your own like catharsis of releasing that energy onto this album, but the fact that you can feel it so strongly from her is
impressive.
It's talent.
Yeah.
I will say, to your point about some of these being a little more like forgettable, or that they don't shine as much like certain songs on here as some of the stronger ones, I think that I would agree with that in terms of some of these being a little more like overtly playlistable. But in terms of the album as a whole, I don't know if I per se, and I think it's because of just how much like this feels like a personal album that's like expressing certain feelings. Like I think there's a place for every single song on here. I don't think that anyone necessarily outshines another. I think that they all do everything well in their own right. But there are definitely stronger songs on here. Like you said, Hams in a Glass, I'm in the Market to Please No One, Wilburn Street Tavern. I think my favorite might be Swimmer's Ear.
That's one of my least favorites on the album, actually.
Okay, yeah. Well, we had to find somewhere to disagree on this. Knowing us, there was no way we could be in agreement about everything.
It's the opening two songs, Jumper Cables and You Look Like a Drunk Phoebe Bridgers. They're both fine. And then Swimmer's Ear, and then Johnny's Dead. Everything else I think is great. Those four, just when I go back into my playlist to listen to songs off of this album, every time I listen to those, it's just, they're good, but the punk energy and anger and confidence that I get on songs like Hams in a Glass, in Are You Famous, I'm in the Market to Please No One, Attention, Words Tavern, Swear to God That I'm Fine. I'm not getting that in the opening two tracks. I'm not getting that out of Swimmer's Ear. It's there, but I'm not resonating with it as much for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing about it is that Jumper Cables and Don't Wallow, I need some more time with them as an opener and closer, respectfully, because they don't have like as overt opener and closer energy.
I think Don't Wallow has closer energy.
Oh, it definitely does. Just not, I don't know. I guess with an album that had this much energy, I was definitely expecting something maybe a little bit more overt to me. But I mean, it's still, like you said, it does have closer energy. It's a good closer. I think by nature of the album being so strong everywhere else, I would like a bit of a, at least for me personally, stronger opener and closer, but at the same time, like both work well. I think with more time, I'll come to appreciate it, because I only listened to this album, I think, 3 times at this point, because I was gone for half of February. This, I'm in the Market to Please No One was the only single I really listened to, and I'm very glad that I did. I would not be surprised if you or I were talking about this at the year. I mean, I don't know what the rest of the year holds, but this punk, I'm never, the thing that makes this so special for me is I'm not a big fan of punk rock. Like, all things considered,
on the whole, we've been doing this podcast for 5 years. This is like one of the first truly punk rock albums we've ever discussed.
I think the closest might be a Dragged Under album.
Yeah, Dragged Under. I was thinking going all the way back to Silverstein's album in 2020.
Ah, yeah.
With like Infinite and Shapeshift, that sort of sound. But we don't talk about music that sounds like this very often. It's like very guitar rock based, but this is not the typical type of sound or band or genre that we discuss. But Winona Fighter, there's something about their sound that just works.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I think to wrap up, I think if there's any weakness to the album, it is the opener and closer, as you mentioned. They aren't like standouts compared to some of the other songs on here. But even with my criticisms of some of the songs in the middle falling like a little flat and not being super memorable, you listen to this album front to back and I'm having a great time, even with the underwhelming songs in the mix. It's just when I'm going back to individual songs on their own, they don't give me that energy that I've become accustomed to with my favorites on this album. But yeah, this was a very pleasant surprise. Cross it off. Winona Fighter, debut album.
Bingo.
Would love to hear some of these songs live one day.
Oh, absolutely. I the aggression and energy in some of these, I need to be there to experience it. Yep. Justin or Jacob, did either of you guys...
I'm assuming the answer is no, so I was ready to move on.
No.